Why is there something rather than nothing? This question has puzzled philosophers, scientists, and thinkers throughout history. If at some point there was truly nothing, then how did we end up with everything? Often theists propose God or some other divine action as the answer. And while this can be a comforting explanation, this, however, only shifts the question rather than answering it. If some divinity created everything, what created that divinity? So we have a problem here. At some point things have to exist, but how can we get things from nothing? I mean, something coming from nothing is impossible. Or is it? Welcome to the second episode of Thinking About Things with Flying Prist. Let's begin. Topic 1. What is a thing? Before we tackle nothing, we need to define what a thing is. So, what is it? Google defines thing with 6 definitions with more sub-definitions. An object that one need not, cannot, or does not wish to give a specific name to, or an inanimate material object as distinct from a living sentient being, or an action, event, thought, or utterance, or so on. With those in mind, to be more concise, we can define thing as any object, concept, or entity that can be referred to distinctly. This includes not just physical objects, but also abstract concepts like numbers, thoughts, etc. So basically, anything we can refer to using language is a thing. Now that we understand what a thing is, let's explore its opposite. Topic 2. What is nothing? Now that we have defined what a thing is, we must define nothing. Thankfully, the definition here is a lot more simple. Nothing can be defined as the absence of things. And now, to complicate this, we can ask, is it really that simple? Let's think about it. When we imagine nothing, we often picture an empty void, maybe a vast black infinite expanse. But even that isn't truly nothing, because empty space still has things in it. It has dimensions, properties, and in physics, even a vacuum isn't completely empty. It contains quantum fluctuations and the background energy. So what would true nothing be? It wouldn't be an empty void. It wouldn't be darkness, since darkness is still something. True nothingness would have no space, no time, no energy, no physical laws, just an absolute absence. But here's the tricky part. Can we even conceive of such a state? Even the very act of imagining nothing gives it a kind of existence in our minds. We'll discuss this in a later section, but for now let us go back to the simpler definition, which is nothing is the absence of things. Now, with thing and nothing defined, let us get back to the original question, which is why is there something rather than nothing? The only way for something to exist instead of nothing is for something to come from nothing. But that's impossible, right? Right? Topic 3. Laws of the universe. Why do we think that it is impossible for something to come from nothing? Well, it's obvious, right? But we've got to investigate claims even harder when they seem obvious, because sometimes obvious things are extremely wrong. So, where does this idea come from? Well, we have a law in science, the law of conservation of energy, saying energy cannot be created or destroyed. And since in everyday language, things are often confused with matter, and matter is a form of energy. So with that, the idea of something can't come from nothing seems pretty solid. But based on the actual definition of things from earlier, we realize a really interesting thing. The laws of physics can be referred to using language, and thus are things themselves. So a true nothing will not include this or any other laws of physics. Thus, if nothing has no laws preventing something to come from nothing, what else is stopping it? But that idea gives us a really unstable view of nothing. It seems like something coming from nothing is the correct idea. And while the absence of a law doesn't mean that it will immediately be broken, that also means that it won't be a restriction. But wait a second. Throughout the video so far, we've been using language to refer to nothingness itself. Does that make it a thing? Topic 4. Can nothing truly exist? Here's a paradox. If we can talk about nothing, doesn't that make it a concept, which we can refer to as a distinct entity using language, and therefore a thing? So what does this mean for our conception of this nothing? Is nothing itself a thing? Or does a true nothing exist at all? The problem could also be that the earlier definition of thing doesn't actually work, though that seems unlikely since it works for every other situation. Now, one response to this can be that yes, nothing itself is a thing, while containing no things. But a problem with this comes that, for example, a box containing no boxes cannot itself be called a no box. It is still a box. Basically, to refer to a group as containing things following a rule, the container must also follow that rule. Another idea could be that true nothing doesn't exist at all. I mean, we haven't really come close to finding a true nothing. The closest we've got is intergalactic space, where very little of matter or antimatter exists. Even then, there isn't a place in the universe where any laws of physics don't exist. And so, without solid proof of this nothing, this absolute absence existing, especially with the above reasoning showing that this nothing isn't possible, we ought to realize that nothing cannot or does not exist. But what does this mean for the question we started with? It seems the best answer now for why is there something rather than nothing is that something must exist because nothing cannot exist. Since we've argued that nothing cannot exist, that raises a new question. Does that mean existence is the default state of reality? Let's investigate this further. Topic 5. Existence as default. Why do we assume that nothing is the default state of being? The modern day thought of nothing as default could be from the way Big Bang is commonly understood, or rather misunderstood. So it is important to address that even the Big Bang didn't start from nothing, and that isn't referring to conceptual things like laws of physics or universal constants. Rather, there was matter before the Big Bang. The Big Bang began from a singularity, an infinitely small point which has all the matter of the universe in it. Now, I'll admit my understanding of the Big Bang isn't the best, so I'll leave a link in the description of science communicator Professor Dave's explanation of it in case you want to learn more. Other than that, it seems most other ideas of something from nothing come from creation stories in most mythologies we have. However, even in them, we didn't start from a true nothing. In Abrahamic mythology, God exists before the creation of the world, and God is something. In Norse mythology, the creation myth starts from three things existing before it: Niflheim, Muspelheim, and Ginnungagap. In the Greek myths, primordial gods such as Chaos and Nyx seemingly predate the creation of the earth. And this happens in most other creation stories as well. Something has to exist as a starting point. So, with all of that, I think we can reach a conclusion now. Conclusion. If true nothingness is impossible, then existence must be the default state. That means something didn't come from nothing, something always was in some form. So instead of asking why is there something rather than nothing, maybe the real mystery is whether a true nothing, an absolute absence, can even be possible. This was the second episode of Thinking About Things with Flying Prist. Thanks for watching this, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to like this video, and if you want to see more, make sure to subscribe. If you have some points you want to discuss, then be sure to leave a comment and I'd love to talk about it. Also, do tell me in the comments about which topic I should tackle next. And as always, I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.